You think you understand punishment. You picture a crime. You picture a consequence. Pain, imprisonment, death, something taken away as repayment for what was done. But in ancient Rome, one of the most sophisticated legal civilizations in human history, there existed a punishment so strange, so inverted, that modern historians still struggle to explain it without sounding like they are describing a completely different species. The torture was not the punishment. The torture was the prize. To understand why, you have to forget everything you know about justice. You have to go back to a world where your body was not fully your own, where your legal status, your social rank, and your very humanity were encoded in whether or not you could be made to bleed in public. In Rome, slaves could not testify in court, not without torture. Read that again. A slave's testimony was legally worthless unless it was extracted under physical suffering. Roman law held that slaves, being property rather than persons, had no reliable inner life. They could lie freely. They had no stake in honor. The only way to reach truth through a slave, the law reasoned, was to make the body speak when the mouth could not be trusted. This was called the quaestio, the examination, and it was conducted by a professional torturer, the quaestionarius, in full view of the court. But here is where everything inverts. For a slave to be called to quaestio was not a mark of disgrace. It was a mark of relevance. It meant the slave knew something. It meant the slave mattered. It meant, in a world where most enslaved people lived and died as invisible labor, that this particular person had been close enough to power to witness something that power now desperately needed. Historian Keith Bradley, one of the foremost scholars of Roman slavery, has written extensively about how the quaestio placed the enslaved body at the center of Roman legal spectacle, not as a victim, but as an instrument of truth. The slave who survived the quaestio and whose testimony held up under scrutiny became, in a strange and terrible way, credible, authenticated, more real than before. For certain slaves, particularly those attached to wealthy Roman households, being called to quaestio could shift the dynamics of an entire trial. Their words wrung from their bodies could condemn senators, could free the wrongly accused, could end dynasties. There is a documented case from the late Republic, analyzed by classicist Jan Thomas in his work on Roman legal fictions, in which the testimony of a single tortured household slave was used to convict a Roman nobleman of poisoning his wife. The slave's evidence, extracted over 3 sessions, became the foundation of a prosecution that reshaped inheritance law. One person, legally classified as property, and yet the entire machinery of Roman justice turned on what his body revealed. Now ask yourself, why would a civilization this sophisticated build a system where truth required suffering to be valid? The answer, according to anthropologist David Graeber's research into ancient debt and body sovereignty, is not cruelty. It is ontology. It is a fundamental belief about what kind of being can possess truth and what kind of body can be trusted to hold it. A Roman citizen's word was backed by honor. Honor was a public, social substance accumulated through reputation, family, military service, the visible approval of other citizens. A citizen who lied in court risks something real, their standing, their dignity, their place in the social fabric. A slave had none of that. No honor to lose. No reputation to protect, no social fabric to tear. So the body became the substitute. Physical pain, Roman legal thinkers argued, was the great equalizer, the one experience that could not be faked, could not be performed, could not be social climbed. A body breaking under pressure was, in this logic, more honest than a tongue. The quaestio was not sadism encoded into law. It was epistemology. It was a civilization's answer to the question, how do we know what is true? And here is the twist that historians like Mary Beard have pointed to in their work on Roman public life. The system did not always work the way it was supposed to. Slaves learned what answers were expected. Torturers, often paid by the party requesting the quaestio, had incentives to stop when the right words appeared. The testimony that emerged was not always truth, it was endurance shaped into narrative. The Romans, at some level, knew this, and they kept doing it anyway. Because the quaestio was never only about finding facts. It was about producing a moment, a public, witnessed, physical event that the court could point to and say, this is where the truth was made. Justice in Rome was not just a verdict. It was a performance. And the tortured body was its most powerful prop. You already know this system. You have seen its logic repackaged in every era since. The idea that suffering confers credibility, that pain produces authenticity, that a person who has endured something physical carries a kind of truth that comfort cannot provide. Ancient Rome did not invent cruelty. It invented something more durable. The belief that the body, broken open, reveals something the mind alone never could. And that belief has never fully left us.